This is The Naked Patient, Beyond the Operating Room. Listen as Dr. Nicholas Howland talks with real patients about their real experiences with plastic surgery.
Hello and welcome to the Naked Patient podcast. I'm Dr. Nicholas Howland. With me today is patient, friend, manager, all the things, Miss Amie Leany.
Hello, Nicholas.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So Amie, we'll dive into the patient part of Amie here in a little bit, but Amie is the manager at Clarity Skin, which is the med spa that I am a co-owner in with Dr. Rick Fryer, Steve Warnock, and Jed Bindrup. You've been there for how long?
I have been there almost 7 years. Part
Longer
of that
than I
family.
have.
Yes, longer than Nicholas has been there. Yeah.
Yeah, you were in there when I joined 5 years ago.
Yes.
And then I became an owner pretty shortly after, only a year later. I think it was going to be 2 years, but there was a partner that left. Dave Matoki retired earlier than we thought he might.
Yes.
And so I swooped in.
Yes, came to help run our crazy practice.
Brought some young, mediocre plastic surgery energy.
Not mediocre at all.
Into the building. I remember actually, so if you walk into Clarity, there is a wall with big pictures of the owners. And it's been there forever.
Yes, it has.
And that first year, every time I would go to Clarity, I don't know, I would walk past that wall of pictures. I was like, I want my damn picture on that wall.
We wanted your picture on that wall, so it got there. Eventually. It's taken a while, but it's there.
It has taken a while.
Yeah.
Now it needs to be changed.
It does.
Like
it's so old.
fat baby face Nick.
That was very little Nick. Yes. Beginner Nick.
Yeah, beginner Nick, 60 pounds heavier Nick. It was different.
We still love that Nick, the same as this Nick.
How did you get to where you are now? How did you get to manager Clarity?
So I've been in the beauty industry of some sort most of my life. So I went to hair school in high school many, many, many years ago. And I did hair for many years and became great friends with some people that own a local med spa now and hair salon. And so I did hair with her for many years in our place together. She was not the owner at that time. And then I got out of the business for a little while, but we've always kept a good, strong connection with the owners of this med spa now. And I started out, I was gone for a while, and they had a position available for a basically medical coordinator to handle their nurses that they had on staff there on top of just their estheticians and hairstylists. And so the owner reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested? And I said, of course, I love the beauty world. I wanted to stay in it and be back in that world because I was out of it for about 10 years, but otherwise always in the beauty industry. So when she approached me, it was a lot to take in. So I worked there for about 7 years as well. And while I was there, I built relationships, of course, with other people in the industry and had always heard about Clarity Skin. It's kind of a big deal, or was, and still is. It was just one of those like,
there was early med spa days, right?
Yes.
There wasn't a different med spa in every corner back in that day.
Yes, back in the day there was not, and Clarity is and was one of the largest med spas, had been around the longest, owned by the most reputable physicians, all board certified. I mean, they had a reputation, and I had heard their manager was leaving. So when the manager was leaving, one of the vendors had mentioned to me that they may be looking for someone, and it seemed very overwhelming at the time when I heard that. I mean, it's a full spa, there's 13 employees, we're very, very busy, and I would be basically running the show. And it seemed very intimidating at first, but I'm the type of person that go big or go home. So I just applied, jumped in with both feet. I had that experience behind me of being where I had been previously for the 7 years and really understood the aesthetic side of things, understood what it took to build relationships with people, with medical providers. They're very different as far as RNs or NPs opposed to maybe an esthetician or hairstylist. The mindset is different. They just are much more professional. They have a little more writing on the line with each treatment they do on patients. So I just went into that knowing I had that behind me, and I just applied and interviewed many times. It was a long process to be hired finally at Clarity. So I had to trying to coordinate 4 doctors, which we'll get into, is a bit of a struggle sometimes, getting everyone together.
One plastic surgeon is a bit of a struggle.
So getting all 4 together to interview me multiple times took some time, but then once they did offer me the job, I took it and literally love it. I love everything I do. I love my staff. I love each one of the doctors. It's trying at times, for sure, but I love it. I love what I do. I love my team.
There's no bias here. I mean, Amy's having a very open conversation with one of her bosses. What could go wrong?
Yes, what could go wrong in this? It's fine.
What is kind of one of the most challenging aspects of running a spa like that? Because it is a big spa. We have multiple estheticians. We have nurse practitioners. We have nurses. We have lasers and injectables. And I mean, it's a complex machine.
It is. It is complex.
And you've got 4 owners who really, for better or worse, say, here you go.
Yeah.
Make sure this makes us money.
Yes.
Make sure this does really, really well. And because we're going to be over here operating and we're too busy to come and watch this day to day. So good luck.
Yeah. It does feel like that sometimes, but I also know that each one of them have a very open door policy, that at any time I could go talk to them about anything. But it is definitely kind of my show. But my show wouldn't be able to go on without my staff, without the amazing people that you mentioned. Our nurses, our nurse practitioner, our front desk is the main flow of things. So I would say probably systems being in place is probably one of the things you have to make sure you have, as well as attention to detail. I'm OCD to an extreme on things, that it has to be perfect. It has to run a certain way. And it's fun. It's challenging, like you're saying. I would say my biggest challenge is keeping communication between staff. Mm-hmm. That letting and helping each of them feel valued in what we do.
Yeah.
On a day-to-day.
I feel like that's probably pretty true for most businesses, right? Is making sure your staff feel appreciated and valued and like they're an integral part of the team.
Correct.
Because I think that's that's a hard realization for a lot of people is when you realize that you're just replaceable.
Exactly.
And while that might be the case with most jobs,
yes, with all jobs,
you still want those people to feel like they are irreplaceable or at least integral.
Correct. And like you said, it is key. People in most jobs and in any job really are replaceable, but finding that fine line of teaching them and helping to educate them in knowing they're valued and that knowing their opinions matter, I think is very important. And I think that's one thing that Clarity does well. We listen to our staff and then we try to act upon those suggestions. Of course, there's always those difficult conversations we have to have sometimes, but also I hope they each know it's coming from a place of love. If we have to have that conversation of, that wasn't done right, or don't, make sure you're doing this. And always we're very customer centric. Yeah. And I think that's one great thing that our team has. We work together to make sure the client has a good experience, or the patient.
I think that's not one of the hardest things, but that's a difficulty that I deal with managing employees, is having to have a hard conversation, because I want all my employees to like me.
Yes.
I have such a hard time if I think somebody doesn't like me.
Yes.
It like tears me up. And I'm like, what do I do? How do I fix this? How can I make this
better.
Right? Make this better? And I'm learning that you can't be friends with everybody.
Correct.
Especially in a business. And
it's hard. That is a very, very hard lesson. And I've learned it a few times over. Yeah. And I'm very similar to you, Nick, in that aspect, is I want to be liked.
Yeah.
And I've heard it many, many times in many leadership courses I've been to, is it's lonely at the top. And it's not meant mean, but it's just, you have to have that line. Yes, you can be friend with someone, but don't cross that line to where they feel that you're being mean to them if you have to reprimand them for something.
Yeah. And so here's one thing that I currently struggle with, for example, is listen, when you're in healthcare, you spend more time with your work family than you do with your actual family.
100%.
Just, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And so you develop very close relationships with those people. Some of those relationships then bleed outside of work, right? And I have several colleagues and coworkers who I will hang out with or go to dinner with or go to a bar with or go to a party with. And I think that is a very good thing, but I also do see people who are not kind of part of that struggling, where they feel
feeling
like
left out or not part of.
They feel left out or not part of, or they feel like there's favoritism with the ones that you are friends with. And so I try very hard to separate those two, or at least to make it when we're at work, it's business.
Yes.
Right? I don't care if we hung out last night and, if we're here, it's business. And you don't get any special treatment just because you and I went to dinner.
Correct. And I think that's key, is making sure you can separate the two. That you can, work is work, outside of work is outside of work.
Yeah.
To where if there is something, and honestly, I feel I'm almost harder on those that I'm closest to than those I am not.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's overcompensating to where I don't want them to feel I'm favoring someone else. I'm doing better at it now, but I definitely have learned along the way, especially, again, working with mostly women. We have one male employee at Clarity Skin. The rest are females, and females were not easy. We're not. And just making sure that they know I can be your friend tonight and we can go have a drink or whatever it is, but tomorrow I'm still your boss.
Yeah.
There's still that line that we have to maintain, that if you step over that, I'm going to call you on it. And that's my big thing I'm working on currently, is consistency and coaching in the moment. If I see something done, and the more you do it and the more you have the conversations that are hard, that you don't want them to be mad at you for, the more they know, oh, she's not being a bitch. She just has to run a business. And letting them know and understanding that, I think, is key.
All right, let's move away from Clarity a little bit.
Yes, yeah, let's.
Beat that horse.
Yes, we beat that horse. It's an amazing horse. You should come see us. Clarity Skin, Draper.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Listen, you're going to get a chance to promote stuff. Calm down.
It's just my life, so I'm just going to promote Clarity as my life.
So I do want to talk about your surgeries, but I want to, I don't know if you want to share this or not, because I think you have gone through some difficult things in your life.
Yes.
Coming up. And but I think it's an important part of what's shaped you into who you are as a person.
Yes.
So we're right here in your hometown.
Yes, right here.
Here in Orem.
Here in Orem. O-Town, here we are.
And so the Rookery Studios, which is where we record, is located in Orem. This is where you grew up.
Yes, just literally 2 miles from this location. And it's my parents' home.
2 miles, oh my gosh.
Yes.
And you're married to your high school sweetheart.
I am, yes, 27 years married. I'm old. I'm getting up there, but yes.
And this is what I love about Clarity and Canyon Crest and our little mix. Like, I know my employees' spouses.
Yes, which is important.
It's not like my work family extends to their real family. Like, I feel connected to all of them. Great. And so, like, I know Travis really well.
Yes.
And you guys have 2 girls.
Correct. We have 2 girls.
But there was a son.
Correct. So in between my 2 girls. So I had Arcadia is my oldest daughter. She's 19, almost 20. And then I have a 14-year-old daughter, and my son was in between the 2. Mm-hmm. So he would be 16 if he passed from SIDS. So 4 months old. Took him to the daycare, but daycare was my mother-in-law, was grandma's house, and she tended other children as well. And she put him down for a nap, and he just didn't wake up. So it is a thing that happened. And my children, it's funny, my youngest forever, if anyone would say, how many kids do you have? If I said 2, she would say, no, Mom, there's 3. Mm-hmm. And Berlin is my youngest, and she's 14. And that was her big thing is, no, Mom, there's 3 of us. There's 3. And in our family, there is 3 kids. We talk about them every day. It's something we have learned to grow through. But I agree when you say it has defined me, it has in some way, but I don't use that as, oh, well, I lost a son, poor me aspect. But yes, there was a time where I probably did. And that I was letting that be, oh, I'm the mom who lost a child.
Yeah. Well, you overcame like a lot of us, when we go through traumatic events in our lives, we become the victim.
Yes.
Right? And there's a lot of people who make that their story.
Correct.
And they're the victim in that story. And I think what I love about you is that you've moved away from that, and that you weren't the victim, and it was an experience that I don't know how do you use that experience now?
I use that experience in being patient with people, and also looking at every day as it's more important than you think it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Like I kind of twisted it into a positive thing. There's a long story with my son's death, with when Boston passed away. So we had found out about a week before he passed away that he had muscular dystrophy, which is those of you who don't know, it's a degenerative muscle disorder that as you age, your muscles deteriorate and die. And my younger brother, who actually passed away as well when he was 19, I was 21 when he passed away. So my son had been diagnosed with that right before he passed. And so watching my brother grow up with this disease and watching the disability kind of control our family in a lot of ways, not really control, but it was a whole family's effort to raise him and take care of my brother. So honestly, finding out when my son that he had that was devastating. I think that was harder for our family than honestly him passing in some ways, in my mind. I can't speak for everyone else, but in my mind, finding that diagnosis out, that it was like basically sealed the fate that I would bury my son at some time in his life.
Yeah.
It's just, what would his life look like until that date?
Yeah.
So then when he passed away literally a week later, it was almost in some weird way, not a blessing, because like your child dying is never a blessing, but not having to watch him suffer for the 19 years like my little brother did. I mean, he was born in the 70s, my brother, and there was definitely things have come a long way, but then it was hard, and watching my family go through that.
I mean, muscular dystrophy is still a crippling disease.
It is. It's very.
I don't know what the updated life expectancies are on it, but.
I'm not sure. I know with the strain that my family carries, because it is genetic, the females in our family carry it. The boys actually get the disease. So it's the Duchenne strain of muscular dystrophy. And so is one of the more severe ones that eventually they pass from either pneumonia or just some muscle, your organs give up after so long with all the stuff.
Well, that's why, we don't talk about this enough until I think only really recently, how important good muscle growth is.
Definitely.
And so like more and more people are realizing the importance of weightlifting and building
that strength
and building muscle. You don't have to be a bodybuilder, but people with actual like muscle on their body have a much longer life expectancy rating. They can carry around their body for longer. They have higher metabolism. They just live longer. Like muscle is a hugely important part of your body that we don't talk about enough.
That's true. I was not aware of that statistic. That's cool.
Anyway, little doctor sidetrack.
Little doctor sidetrack. We like those.
Back to that, first of all, can't even fathom like the depth of grief of losing a child.
It is unbearable, like really, truly. When I look back on some of those dark nights, like it was always night. Nighttime was always the worst. Mm-hmm. Like during the day you had support and you had your family and you had everyone there and people checking on you and texting you or all of those things. But it was at night especially with them being an infant, because you're still, honestly, 4 months, you're still kind of postpartum. There's still a lot of hormones. There's a lot of crap going on. And it was so hard at night because I just wanted to hold him.
Yeah.
And he was gone.
Yeah.
And it was just awful. It was. But I also, in those nights, decided I'm not a victim of this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let it dictate who I am or who I become.
Yeah.
So
this last weekend, we were at a retreat for the We Are the They, this men's group that I'm a part of. And one of the exercises was with my life coach. Her name's Melissa, fabulous. And she used to work kind of hand in hand with Tony Robbins.
Okay.
And she led us through an exercise that Tony will often lead with people, which is, it's called Change Your Story, Change Your Life. And the exercise was to think of a story that has defined us. We kind of write down that story.
Okay.
And most of the people will write down a story that where they're the victim. Right? Very few people actually write down a story where they're the hero. It's often something that happened to you and you feel like you were the victim. She then kind of goes through actually changing that story or reassessing how you look at that story.
Okay.
You're no longer the victim. What's another way that you can look at the story? So, for example, and then she, anytime you're going to blame somebody for something bad that happened to you, if you're going to put that on that person, you also have to put anything good that came from that on that person or on that event.
Yeah.
So for Melissa, who's teaching this exercise as we're going through it, she went through 3 really horrible, painful divorces and relationships and a lot of trauma within that.
Yeah.
And she said there was a lot of shit that I could blame on these relationships. But at the same time, I wouldn't be a life coach and here and part of this We Are the They movement without those experiences. So I have to also give credit and value to and blame for the good if I'm also going to put the bad on it. And a lot of guys, as they went through this exercise, had really cool, beautiful experiences. Like one of the guys in the group, one of my very close friends, had this realization. So he was born last to his mother and was kind of always thought of as like an accident.
Okay.
And he was always thought of as like an accident. And he had this realization in this exercise that his mom had been told she would never have more kids after the second child.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden he's doing this exercise and he's sitting here just writing next to me and he just starts sobbing. And I got to talk to him later about it. It was really cool.
Yeah.
He's like, I realized in that moment, I'm not an accident. I'm a friggin' blessing. I'm a miracle. She wasn't supposed to have any more kids. I'm an absolute miracle. And it just was a shift.
I'm sure.
In perspective.
Completely.
Same story, right?
Yeah, same story.
Same thing happened, but he saw it in a different light and it completely changed his whole mindset. So it's really cool that you've done that without having to need somebody like Melissa, like I do.
Yes, I need someone like Melissa too. Trust me. There's many other experiences that you need that perspective too. I mean, at the time it was, why did this happen? Why? I know some family members blamed God. Why would God do this to anyone? Why would this happen? And I think because of my growing up, and I have the most amazing parents in the world. They're awesome, and they've taught us so well to always look at the positive side of everything. And then watching what we went through with my brother, and then in my silver lining in losing my son was I didn't have to watch him suffer.
Yeah.
And I think that to me was easier for myself than my husband Travis, who did very much blame and did very much struggle because he didn't live the day to day with someone with muscular dystrophy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the best big brother to my brother always, and he was around a lot because we dated all of high school. So he was around for a lot of when my brother was around, but not the younger years, not the development years of watching him go to physical therapy, not being able to walk till he was 6. And he broke his femur like 6 times because your bones become brittle without the muscle to support. So to me, it was just so much easier to thank God for not making him suffer.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
So.
And you can do that with anything in your life.
You can. You truly can. And it's loving what is, right? I'm reading this cool book right now. It's called Loving What Is. Mm-hmm. And it's asking yourself basic questions on, is this my perspective of something, or what's the reality, or what's the why? Or is this in my control, God's control, or someone else's control? And just kind of taking a step back and looking at the entire situation. Kind of, it sounds like what your coach was doing as well.
Yeah.
That same exact situation, you just flip it around.
Yeah. So I had, you know this, but I had 3 major car accidents within a span of a year when I was a resident.
Yes.
Broke my back, broke ribs, tore my labrum in my shoulder, thought I was going to be paralyzed. And I was a trauma activation at my hospital twice.
Yes,
Never
it's
want
unreal.
to be. You never want to be a trauma activation at your own hospital. But going through those experiences has helped me be a better physician and surgeon more than anything else I think ever could have. My first few years of practice here, I took call at 8 different hospitals. And I would do a lot of hand trauma and a lot of facial trauma. And there wasn't a single time that I would walk into a trauma bay or an ER and remember what it's like to be there.
And that's key.
Know what that patient is feeling.
Yeah.
Like having actually experienced being on a backboard for 6 fucking hours until your back is numb and you can't move and everything is screaming on fire. You can actually have a little bit of sympathy for somebody who's in that same position because you've been there. And so I got to a point where for a long time I was really angry that those things happened to me. And I was the victim in them. And that was like my trauma. That was my story, right?
Yes.
And now I'm just grateful that I had those experiences because now I can relate to my patients, I think, better than just about anybody.
Which I agree. I think you had to go through that to be and have the bedside manner that you have. Because you can't be there if you don't know. And I think it's made me be less arrogant and less conceited. And I know that sounds really weird that losing a child it just grounds you. It just makes you really realize I'm a little bitty speck in this big situation of world or life or whatever, however we want to look at it. And just being more empathetic to everyone. Or everyone has their story. Everyone has that shitty ass thing that happened to them. But what do you take from it? Like you took being able to understand what that patient feels when they're in that trauma state. And you know how to help them through that. Where I feel I can help people through emotional trauma state because of knowing nothing on earth is worse than losing a child. Nothing. I will say that hands down, nothing. But everyone to one little thing to them, like losing their dog, that they've never maybe had children and they lose their pet, to them, that is the same loss. And being able to vary the different levels, everyone's loss is loss. Whether it's a child, or it's a pet, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a relationship, whether it's even just like I've been listening to Corey's podcast that you've been doing with her, is you've got to throw somebody off a cliff, right? If that's the person, that could be traumatic for people of, okay, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm cutting you out of my life, and that's their version of trauma.
Yeah.
And so it's being able to look at everyone and realize we all have something, right? If we all wore labels across the top of our heads of what that trauma is, I think how much more empathetic or sympathetic we would be to each other.
Yeah.
You know, you see someone walking down the street and they're well put together, but you don't know that their child might have just died.
Yeah.
And if you knew that, how would you treat people? And I always try to keep that in perspective with myself when I meet people. When I meet people, when I'm around different people, what are they not telling you?
Yeah.
And I often make excuses for people's attitudes based on that because we don't know. We don't know what they're going through.
It's true.
So I always try to think that and keep it in mind.
That's a very good approach.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your surgery a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Before we wrap things up.
Yeah, because that's kind of why we're here. But
yeah, well, that's
yes,
that's why we're. I mean, that's not why we're here. We're just here because you're amazing, and I wanted to talk to you.
Thanks.
But so we've done a couple surgeries for you.
Correct. Yes.
I'll let you tell.
Okay, so
and give your why.
Yes. Okay, so I'm not new to the plastic surgery world, obviously, with my little brother having his disabilities that he had. He was actually born with a cleft palate and a hair lip. So full open cleft palate. So I was plastic surgery never scared me. My little brother went through 13 major plastic surgeries by the time he was 10. And I was only 2 years older than him. So it was just part of our life. Part of family was plastic surgery. We had an amazing plastic surgeon who actually, Dr. Hershey, who is the founder of Hershey Smiles, which Dr. Warnock is part of as well. But so he did a lot of those things when he was around. So I got very familiar with plastic surgery, never scared of it. So I initially had my first breast aug after my first child. She was probably 2 when I had my original breast aug many, many years ago. And then I had those for a long time. And then I had a Reaug, which I was really happy with, but I have a very far apart sternum. So no matter where you put my breast implant, they were always too far apart. I never could have cleavage. And I was an A on a good day when I was bloated before any surgery. So I had no boobs at all. So when I got them, I was thrilled with them. But then the more I had them, the more I realized, wait, they're really far apart.
Yeah.
So had them redone, but they were still far apart. So then when Dr. Howland came into our practice, and he has definitely a different approach and the fat transfer ideas of things that you don't have to necessarily be stuck without cleavage. You can use your own fat to give yourself cleavage. And I had gone through a pretty significant weight loss. Well, what I consider significant. I'm only 5 feet tall. So 10 pounds is a big amount to carry, or even 15 it shows very well. So I'd probably lost about 20 pounds. And with that, I lost my ass. Like I had no butt. My boobs were too far apart. I was feeling old and saggy. So I went and had a consultation with Dr. Howland to see what could we do for that. Obviously, he, as we all know, Kay Jenkins is one of his amazing patients who has done many BBLs, which she has amazing results for what she wants. And that's what she wants. And she looks beautiful. And I'm proud of her for embracing her as her. I wanted a little bit of that. I wanted some more curves. I wanted my butt back because it was gone after losing weight. It seemed to go from my butt, but I still had, some in the midsection. I've had 3 children. I'm in my mid 40s, so I needed some stuff done. So I went and talked to Howland, and we did 360 lipo, a BBL, and fat transfer to the cleavage. Correct? Was that all we did the first time?
Out too.
Oh yeah, and we swapped the implants out.
Yeah, a more highly cohesive implant.
Yes.
To give you some more upper pole fullness.
Yes.
So and then the second surgery was kind of a second round BBL.
Yeah, second round BBL, just not necessarily for the BBL, but more there was a few little lipo spots and a few little divots here and there because I'm OCD and I'm a perfectionist and I want my body to be perfect. So
if you're listening, a BBL is a Brazilian butt lift, and it's got kind of it doesn't really have a bad rap. It's getting better. If you Google BBL, you will still get articles that talk about it being the most dangerous cosmetic surgery you can perform. And the reason is, so with the Brazilian butt lift, you're doing liposuction and you're taking that fat from the liposuction, you're putting it into the buttock to graft into there. Popularized by Kim Kardashian. Yes. And very rarely these days do I see somebody come in and want like that look.
Yes, the overdone. Big shelf buttock. What most people want that are getting BBLs these days is more curves. They want a more hourglass figure.
and they want just a little bit more fullness back there, so that they can feel more feminine. And although even there's a lot of males now doing it. It's called the soccer dad butt.
Oh, soccer dad butt.
Soccer dad butt.
Yes, they need those.
And I love, like, a male BBL is great. I love doing them. But early on, when surgeons were first starting to do this, they said, okay, if we put the fat into the muscle, there's more blood vessels there, so the fat will have a better chance to survive. Because for it to survive, your body has to grow new blood vessels into it. And they're right. Like, you have more blood vessels there, you have better chance for survival of the fat in the muscle. However, if you inject the muscle and accidentally tear a vein and then shove a bunch of fat in there, all that fat can travel through that big vein back to your heart. You get what's called a fat embolism and you die. Not good.
No, not good.
And early adopters of BBLs that were doing it that way had a 10% mortality rate. 1 in 10 patients were dying from this operation, which is, in the world of surgery, is bananas. Like, nobody would ever do an operation that was not life-saving or had the potential for life-saving. Nobody does an elective procedure that's got a 10% mortality rate. That's just silly. And so the American Board of Plastic Surgeons kind of got together and said, listen, if we're going to let our surgeons who are actually board certified do this operation, we're going to make sure we do it in the right way. And so they came down with some guidelines that said, this is what you have to do in order to perform a safe BBL. And one of those major guidelines is we only inject the subcutaneous space. So that space between your skin and the muscle, never the muscle itself, never the fascia on top of the muscle, only the subcutaneous space. And that's the way that I do it. So you get less take of the fat, not as much of it survives as might if you were injecting the muscle, but you've got patients who are alive. So
yeah, we lived through it.
It seems like a good idea. And so what I love about your procedures that you had done is, a lot of people come on this show and they talk about how their procedure was a little bit for reconstruction, or they justify a little bit. You are straight up.
Oh, I'm straight up vain. I'm straight up vain. I'm in the vain aesthetic space. That's what we do on some sides of things. But the amazing thing with that is the growth that my confidence has become, because I've always been fairly confident, but then once my son passed, I did gain weight. I dealt with it with food and drinking, like wine and cheese and food, and that was my coping mechanism. And I'd always been fairly petite. I'd always had great curves. I'd always been known for, oh my God, Amy's got a nice ass. Like, that was something I identified with. And so then when I did the work to lose the weight, I had no butt.
Yeah.
And my husband, bless his heart, loved every bit of it. And he was against me doing it. He really, truly was, because he didn't want it to change me and didn't want me to go crazy and like leave him. Somehow in his mind, he thought if I looked better, I was going to leave him. But to him, I've always looked perfect.
Yeah.
So that was all great that he thought that and still thinks that. I now feel that way too.
See, and my argument and the whole point of this show is that I don't think that's vanity. I really don't. And maybe I'm just, have my plastic surgeon blinders on, but I think doing something for yourself that's going to give you more confidence and going to make you feel better about yourself is empowerment.
100%.
That's not vanity at all.
That is true when you look at it that way.
And when you look at it through that lens, like, there's really, unless you're doing it for the wrong reasons, there's really nothing vain about plastic surgery done for the right reasons.
That's true.
It's and that's what I love about plastic surgery, is those right reasons are different for everybody. Agreed.
They're 100% for your own. You have to want it to go through the shit it takes to recover.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
A bigger ass and better cleavage, for some people, they're going to say that's total vanity and unnecessary.
Yeah.
And for them, it might be. But for you, where you had tied up some of those things in your identity, and to say, I want this for me, and it's going to help me feel more confident, that is the beauty of it. Now, it doesn't take away those insecurities or those problems, right? Like
Right.
tying yourself up into your ass as your identity.
Yes.
That you got to go work on that still.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely still working on that.
What we've said on this show, like with my therapist, like plastic surgery doesn't fix you.
No, it does not. You're still the same person. You just maybe look better.
Exactly.
but your inside's still broken if it's broken.
Yeah. It can give you some tools though to hopefully then feel better and work and do some of that inner work and help overcome those obstacles.
Agreed. Because your outside's fixed in some way. Right. To me, it fixed what was bothering me on the outside, and it forces you to reflect inward.
Yeah.
At least that's what it's done for me. Is okay, got the outside where I want it now. Now I just need my insides to match, is how I feel about it. Not that I have ugly insides by any means, but we all have our thing. We all need to work through inside ourselves.
Yeah.
But having the outside look the way you want it gives me, I don't have to worry about that now. I can just worry about what's happening in my head.
Yeah. So, Amie, honestly, I've loved having you on here. I didn't even think about Boston when I sent you like email, like, hey, let's talk about this. It just kind of stuff comes up naturally. So I really appreciate your candor and willingness to share such a hard part of your life. I think that will really help. And at the end, kind of anything that you want to push or promote or get out there before we say goodbye.
Of course, Clarity Skin. Come see us. We have the most amazing staff in the whole wide world. I love each and every one of them. And just one thing to put out there, and I don't think we promote it enough, we do not incentivize our staff on commission. Everything they do for you is because you want it. It's because you have asked our expert opinion. We're not compensating them off that. It's a unique thing in the aesthetic world.
Oh, it's huge.
So please come see us. Come see our nurses and our estheticians. That's
kind of the whole approach that I have, and that I love, my partners for as well, is nobody needs what we're offering.
Correct.
And we're not pushing what we offer on anybody for money.
No.
We have tools.
Yes.
And if there's something that you don't like or that you want to tweak or that you feel is off, great. We've got a whole toolbox to help you.
Yes.
But we're not going to pay our employees extra in order to sell a few more bottles of scar gel or a few more syringes of filler.
Correct.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's
huge.
Massive.
Yes. And we just have lots of tools. So come see us. So
lots of tools.
We can take care of you.
Thanks for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to The Naked Patient Beyond the Operating Room. I'm Dr. Nicholas Howland. Please remember that every patient who appears on this podcast has consented to discuss their story and their surgery on the podcast. That way we remain HIPAA compliant. This is a free podcast. The best thing that you can do for us is to leave us a review online. Let us know what you liked. Let us know what you'd like to hear. Let us know how we can improve. If you are curious about anything related to plastic surgery, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Dr. Nicholas Howland, and I typically respond there, or you can reach us at the office at 801-571-2020, or we have an online form you can fill out at the website, www.howlandplasticsurgery.com. Any of our coordinators would be happy to help you. Thanks again for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Naked Patient Podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode. Till next time.